If these words have reached you at this exact moment, perhaps there is a reason you are meant to hear them now. Sometimes we come across certain messages when our heart is searching for understanding, when our mind is filled with questions, and when something deep inside us is asking for clarity. Maybe you believe it was just a coincidence, but your intuition, the quiet voice within you that notices what logic cannot explain, brought you here for a reason. The person you cannot stop thinking about, the person whose silence has left a space in your heart, the person whose absence feels impossible to ignore, is connected to the reason you are listening today. There is something about this situation that your mind may not fully understand yet, but a deeper part of you has always sensed that there is more happening beneath the surface. The silence you have experienced may not mean what you have been assuming. It may not be proof that they stopped caring. It may not mean they forgot you, replaced you, or simply walked away without feeling anything. Sometimes silence is not created by a lack of emotion. Sometimes silence happens because emotions become too overwhelming to process. What you are about to understand may completely change the way you see their distance. The story you have been repeating in your mind, the one where you were not enough, where the connection meant more to you than it did to them, or where they easily moved forward without looking back, may not be the complete truth. There are moments when two people create a connection so powerful that one person becomes afraid of what they feel. If something inside you feels connected to these words, write, "I receive this message," in the comments. Allow yourself to acknowledge what your heart has been trying to understand. Sometimes the soul recognizes something before the conscious mind can explain it. Their silence may not be the absence of emotion. It may actually be the result of having too many emotions they do not know how to handle. When someone feels something deeper than they expected, something that challenges their beliefs, their fears, and their old patterns, they may not move closer immediately. Sometimes they step back because they do not know how to carry the intensity of what they are experiencing. Silence can become the place where someone fights their biggest internal battles. It can be the space where they are forced to confront feelings they tried to avoid, thoughts they tried to suppress, and truths about themselves they were not ready to accept. According to the ideas explored in Jung's teachings, what we refuse to face within ourselves often continues to influence our lives. The things we push away do not simply disappear, they remain beneath the surface, waiting for a moment when they demand attention. This person may not be running away from you. They may be running from what this connection awakened inside them. Because accepting what they feel for you would also mean facing parts of themselves they have spent years avoiding. Their silence represents a conflict happening within them. One part of them may recognize the comfort, safety, and familiarity they felt with you. Another part may feel afraid because true connection requires vulnerability, honesty, and the courage to be fully seen. Every person has an emotional limit, a point where feelings become more intense than what they know how to manage. That limit is often created by past experiences, old wounds, fears, and beliefs they have carried for years. Without trying to, you may have reached a place inside them that no one else was able to reach. You became too real, too meaningful, too close to the parts of themselves they usually keep hidden. And when their emotions became too powerful, their instinct may have been to create distance, to become quiet, to protect themselves by stepping away. But silence does not always mean forgetting. Distance does not always mean the connection disappeared. Sometimes silence is where the deepest transformation begins. When they are alone, when distractions disappear, when the world becomes quiet, they are left with their own thoughts and memories. They are left with everything your presence revealed to them. The image that describes their current state is like a container holding intense pressure. Everything is building inside, even though nothing is visible from the outside. They may not even fully understand what is happening within them yet. There may come a moment when everything they have been holding back begins to surface. The feelings they avoided, the words they never expressed, the truth they were afraid to admit. There are nights when they may think about you unexpectedly. Moments when they reach for their phone, consider sending a message, type something, erase it, and repeat the same process because they do not know what to say. From the outside, they may appear completely normal. They may continue their daily routines, laugh with others, answer conversations, and act as if everything is fine. But internally, they may still be processing the absence of someone who had a powerful impact on them. Others may never notice this inner struggle. Their friends may not know. Their family may not understand. But in their private thoughts, memories of you may continue to appear. Not because you were simply someone they liked, but because you became someone who reflected something back to them that they had been avoiding. You became a mirror. Through your presence, they saw their fears, their insecurities, their emotional patterns, and the parts of themselves they had ignored for a long time. You showed them possibilities they were not prepared to face. Jung's teachings often explored the idea of the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we reject, deny, or refuse to acknowledge. When two people form a meaningful connection, they can become mirrors for each other's hidden emotions. You may have reflected their fear of closeness, their habit of leaving when things become serious, their belief that they are not worthy of the love they secretly desire. And perhaps that is why they pulled away. Not because you were not valuable, not because the connection was meaningless, but because being truly seen can feel frightening for someone who has spent years protecting themselves. They were not only facing their feelings for you, they were facing themselves. They were facing the vulnerability required to build something real. They were facing the responsibility of showing up emotionally. They were facing the possibility of receiving a kind of love they may have always wanted, but never believed they could handle. But running away does not erase the impact someone has made on your life. You were not just another person passing through their world. You were an experience that changed something inside them. You became a turning point, a moment that challenged their old way of thinking and forced them to look deeper within themselves. There was likely a moment when something inside them recognized something inside you, a feeling that went beyond surface attraction. A sense of familiarity that bypassed logic and reached something deeper. Jung's teachings described the meeting of two people as something that can create transformation, because when two inner worlds come together, both people are changed by the experience. They may have met other people before. They may have felt attraction before. They may have experienced moments that seemed meaningful. But something about this connection felt different because it touched a deeper part of who they are. You affected them because you were simply yourself. You were not trying to impress them, control them, or become someone else. Your authenticity showed them something they may have been searching for without even realizing it. Through you, they saw a version of life, love, and themselves that they had stopped believing was possible. And this is why moving on may not be as simple as it appears. Even with distance, even with silence. Even with time passing, some connections continue to leave an emotional imprint. This may be why certain memories return, why certain songs remind them of you, why new connections may feel different because they are unconsciously comparing them to the feeling they experienced with you. You were not just a temporary moment, you were an experience that created change. And although physical distance can separate two people, it does not always erase the emotional impact they had on each other. Some connections remain meaningful because they touched something deeper than words, messages, or physical presence ever could. Energy flows through unseen pathways that connect people who have deeply affected each other. These invisible bonds can remain alive even when two people are separated by distance, silence, or time. When a connection reaches a deeper level, its impact does not simply disappear because communication stops. There may still be a feeling between you and this person that is difficult to explain. Moments when they suddenly come to your mind without warning. Moments when you feel their presence, even though they are far away. Sometimes separation removes the distractions of everyday life and makes a person more aware of what truly mattered. They may think about you during quiet moments, when they wake up in the early hours, when they are driving alone, when the world becomes still and there is nothing left to distract them from their own thoughts. In those moments, they may be reminded of the way your presence changed something inside them. The ideas explored in Jung's teachings speak about the deeper patterns that connect human experiences, the shared emotional themes that appear throughout our lives. Some connections become powerful because they challenge us, transform us, and reveal parts of ourselves we were not ready to see. This may be why certain reminders seem to appear at unexpected times. A song, a memory, a place, or a small moment that brings back feelings you thought were buried. These experiences can remind you that meaningful connections often leave an emotional imprint long after physical distance begins. If you want more messages like this, subscribe and allow these reflections to reach you whenever you need them. Silence is not always the end of a story. Sometimes silence is the space where transformation happens. Just like a butterfly changes inside a cocoon away from the outside world, people often experience their greatest growth during moments when no one else can see what is happening. What they are going through may not be simple waiting or ignoring. It may be a period of deep self-reflection, a time when they are forced to examine their choices, their fears, their emotional patterns, and the reasons they pull away from what they truly desire. Growth is rarely comfortable. It requires facing things we would rather avoid. It requires accepting uncomfortable truths and letting go of old versions of ourselves that no longer serve us. They may be learning how to handle emotions they once avoided. They may be questioning beliefs they have carried for years. They may slowly be becoming someone who can understand and appreciate the kind of connection they once felt afraid of. Not because you forced them to change, not because they owe you anything, but because meeting you showed them a different possibility. A deeper way of connecting, loving, and being understood. Once someone experiences something meaningful, it can become difficult to return to the same patterns that existed before. They may no longer feel satisfied with connections that only exist on the surface because they have experienced something that reached a deeper part of them. But before two people can truly reconnect, both have to be ready. A reunion is not only about missing someone, it is about becoming emotionally prepared to create something healthier than what existed before. They may be in their own process of growth right now. You may not see the changes happening inside them, but internal transformation often happens quietly before it becomes visible. The universe, life, or your own intuition often communicates through subtle reminders, through moments that make you pause and reflect, through experiences that seem meaningful because they connect with something you are already feeling inside. Maybe you notice repeating patterns. Maybe certain songs appear at the exact moment you need them. Maybe dreams bring back memories or emotions connected to this person. Maybe there are moments when you suddenly feel a sense of peace or certainty that you cannot fully explain. These experiences may feel powerful because they touch the emotional side of your mind, the part that understands feelings, memories, and connections beyond simple logic. When you notice changes within yourself, when your emotions begin to shift, when you feel a sense of movement after a long period of stillness, it can be a sign that something is changing internally. Often, inner changes happen before outer circumstances change. A person may first experience a realization, then make a decision, and only later take action. If they return, it may happen in a way you do not expect. It may come when you have stopped constantly checking your phone, stopped replaying old conversations, and started focusing on your own peace again. Their message, call, or appearance may arrive suddenly, interrupting an ordinary moment with emotions they have been carrying for a long time. But this time, things may feel different. There may be less pretending, less hiding behind excuses, more honesty, more vulnerability. They may struggle to explain everything they have experienced because some emotional journeys are difficult to put into words. They may try to describe feelings they have been carrying silently, thoughts they never expressed, and realizations they reached while being apart from you. Their words may not come perfectly. They may hesitate, they may become emotional, they may not know exactly how to explain the impact this connection had on them. But sometimes truth is not found only in perfect sentences. Sometimes it is found in the emotion behind the words, in the honesty of their actions, and in the courage it takes to finally open up. The reunion you imagine may not happen like a perfect story. Real healing is not always dramatic or flawless. It is often emotional, complicated, and deeply human. It is two people who went through separate experiences and returned with a greater understanding of themselves and each other. And when that moment comes, you will have an important choice to make. You will have to decide whether their growth is genuine, whether their actions match their words, whether the connection you shared deserves another chance. Because love is not only about returning, it is about returning differently. It is about two people being willing to create something stronger, healthier, and more honest than before. Whether this connection is truly worth opening your heart to again is something that only time, personal growth, and genuine truth can reveal. A person coming back is not the only thing that matters. A return by itself does not guarantee healing, stability, or a better future. What truly matters is whether both people have changed enough, grown enough, and understood enough to create something new instead of repeating the same patterns that created distance before. Because sometimes people return with the same fears they left with. They return with the same habits, the same emotional walls, and the same inability to communicate. And sometimes they return as a different version of themselves, someone who has reflected, learned, and finally understands the value of what they once had. That is the difference between simply coming back and truly coming home. Share this message with someone who is waiting for a person they love to return. Someone who needs the reminder that silence is not always the final chapter. Sometimes silence is where people think, reflect, heal, and discover truths they were not ready to face before. There are moments when two people need space, not because the connection was meaningless, but because they need time to understand themselves. Sometimes growth happens in the quiet spaces between conversations, in the moments when there are no messages being exchanged, but there is still emotional processing taking place. But beyond their return, beyond their decisions, and beyond the possibility of reconnecting, there is something even more important that deserves your attention: your relationship with yourself while you wait. Do not allow someone else's absence to become the center of your entire existence. Do not let their silence control your emotions, your confidence, or your ability to enjoy your own life. Your happiness should never be placed completely in the hands of another person. The greatest strength you can develop is learning to choose yourself with the same passion, care, and devotion you once gave to them. You have already taken an important step by realizing that your peace cannot depend on someone else's timeline. You cannot measure your worth by whether someone stayed, whether they left, or whether they eventually found the courage to return. Your value existed before them. Your beauty existed before them. Your purpose existed before them. You were already a complete person before this connection entered your life, and you remain complete regardless of what happens next. This is one of the hardest lessons people learn. The moment you stop desperately trying to hold on to someone, something inside you begins to change. When you release the belief that another person is responsible for making you whole, you reconnect with your own power. You stop searching outside yourself for the love, confidence, and security that you are capable of creating within. When you stop waiting for someone else to bring happiness into your life and begin building a life that fulfills you, your entire energy shifts. You become more present, more confident, more connected to yourself. You begin remembering the person you were before they arrived, the person who had dreams, goals, passions, and a unique light that existed independently of anyone else. The longing you feel can become a lesson. The waiting can become a journey of self-discovery. The pain can become the doorway that leads you back to yourself. Instead of standing still, hoping someone chooses you, you become someone who chooses yourself every single day. You become someone who continues growing, creating, learning, and living fully, regardless of whether someone returns. And that is where true attraction begins. Not from chasing, not from convincing, not from proving that you are worthy of love, but from becoming deeply connected to who you truly are. The person they were drawn to in the beginning was not someone who needed their approval to shine. It was the authentic version of you, the person who carried their own energy, confidence, and presence. That part of you was always there. Their presence did not create your light, and their absence cannot take it away. Your strength was never borrowed from them. Your worth was never dependent on their attention. You were valuable before they recognized it, and you will remain valuable whether they return or not. If they come back, they should return to someone who has grown, someone who has healed, someone who has remembered their own worth and no longer needs another person to confirm it. This story may not be finished. There may still be lessons, conversations, and moments waiting ahead. Even though there were times when everything felt like an ending, even though the silence lasted longer than you expected, some connections leave behind changes that cannot simply be erased. Deep connections have a way of transforming people. They challenge old beliefs. They reveal hidden fears. They bring attention to wounds that need healing. They force people to look honestly at themselves. And sometimes the greatest transformation happens after separation because distance creates the space needed for reflection. But always remember this: your future does not pause while someone decides what they want. Your life does not begin again only when someone returns. You are not waiting to become complete. You are already becoming. What is truly meant for you will find its way to you when you are ready to receive it. That may be a renewed connection with someone from your past, or it may be a completely unexpected path that brings you something even greater than what you imagined. Either way, your growth is never wasted. If they return, do not imagine them only as the person who walked away. Imagine them as someone who has faced themselves, learned from their choices, and developed the emotional maturity required to love in a healthier way. Imagine someone who returns with honesty instead of confusion, with effort instead of excuses, with consistency instead of temporary emotions, with openness instead of fear. Not because you waited endlessly for them, but because both of you became stronger versions of yourselves. The silence may have been a chapter, but it does not have to define the entire story. Sometimes love does not disappear during distance. Sometimes it changes shape. Sometimes it grows quietly until the right conditions exist for something deeper and healthier to begin. Trust the process of becoming who you are meant to be. Trust the lessons hidden inside difficult moments. Trust that what is truly aligned with your life will not require you to abandon yourself to keep it. And most importantly, trust yourself. Trust the part of you that survived the uncertainty. Trust the part of you that continued loving while learning to choose yourself. Trust the inner voice that reminds you your story is still unfolding, because the chapters ahead may hold more healing, more growth, and more beautiful moments than the ones you have already experienced. Your journey is not defined by who stays or who leaves. It is defined by the person you become along the way.